Hey everybody, welcome to Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I'm your host, Ben Cross. And anyway, I just got a notification here. LinkedIn's giving me troubles here. Let's see here. Let's try one more time. Anyway, might have an issue. Oh, and now we're live. All right, wonderful. Hey, welcome to Love and Relo, everybody. I'm your host, Ben Cross. We got a wonderful show here. We are overcoming adversity left and right already. It's a wonderful Thursday here in Metro Detroit. We got some great guests coming in here. Before we get started, though, talking about lump sums today and rogue movers, I wanted to really quick plug the book, White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism. Again, this is our June book club, book of the month. We will be discussing this book in our book club setting on July 2nd. That is Thursday, July 2nd. We've got some wonderful people coming on to talk about it. If you haven't yet bought this book, you can buy this book from my good friend and guest of the show, Janet Webster Jones, at Source Booksellers in Detroit, local independent Black-owned bookstore, 313-832-1155, or you can email her, sourcebooksellers@gmail.com. It is not too late to get a copy, get in the game, or you can just listen to it on Audible. Let's be honest, that's what most of us do anyway. All right, getting into the program today, we are going to bring on our guest. I got Stephen McGarry from WPP. How are you doing, Stephen?
I'm doing well, thank you. And you?
Good to have you. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Gary Conerly from HomeServices Relocation, friend of the show. How you doing, Gary?
I'm great, Ben. Good afternoon. Good to meet you, Stephen. Good to meet you.
And you as well, Gary.
You know, Gary, whenever you're on the show, I know it's going to be a good day, Gary. Okay.
Let's have fun with it, right?
Yeah, there you go. And Stephen, it's a real pleasure to meet you too. Stephen, I feel like I know you, but this is the first time we've actually kind of seen each other face to face. So I'm kind of excited.
Yeah, I did. You know, it's one of those situations where you hear the names within the industry for so many years, and you finally get to meet somebody face to face. There's no doubt in my mind we have shook hands at some point in time, somewhere along the way, although I don't know when it's going to be that anybody's actually going to be shaking hands again.
Yeah, it might be a while now. Now, Stephen, where are you sitting right now?
I am sitting in the basement of my house in New York.
Awesome. And Gary, where are you?
In my home office in Jackson, Mississippi.
Wonderful. And I'm in my office here in Farmington Hills, Michigan. And today we're going to talk about lump sums. We're going to talk about how sometimes those can go wrong, right? We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of lump sums. Try to give you a comprehensive perspective here. And we want to also interact with the viewers too, because I mean, we have a ton of relocation and global mobility professionals that tune in every day. And I know that they have an opinion about this topic. This is one of the most important topics, I believe, facing the corporate relocation, global mobility industry today is lump sums. And I want to really quick just open it up to the audience before we get started, just to get a little bit of engagement. First, audience, go ahead and let us know where you are. Give your company a shout out. Hit that like button. Let everybody know we are live here. Give our guests a round of applause. Hit that little green button. Get those claps going. And then I want to ask you all, how do you feel about lump sums? How do you feel about it? I think it's a really divisive issue. I think a lot of people feel one way or another. And we're going to kind of explore that. So just throw it in the comments. How do you feel about lump sums? What gut reaction? I say lump sum, you say put it down there, okay? Gary, go ahead and just kind of kick us off here. Just what is a lump sum program? What are some of the names for them? How do they manifest themselves in our world?
Lump sum program, quite simply a situation where a corporation is going to provide usually a flat amount given to an employee to cover any and all expenses related to their relocation. I'll add that it's my experience that most corporations are going to gross up the amount. So for example, a lump sum of, and these are just fictitious numbers, but a lump sum of $5,000 would then have a company add to it the federal, the state, the FICA tax amount so that the $5,000 is actually spendable for the employee. With that said, we have seen some corporations who make a decision that they will not gross up the amount. So that leads to a conversation with the employee about, the 5,000 might be your full amount, but that's not necessarily your spendable amount. And so
Right.
going there, Ben, is where we explain to them that the 5,000 then we have to reduce amount from that 5,000 to compensate for the fact that it is considered to be income by
And
the
generally,
IRS,
that's about
and
a
therefore
third,
taxable.
35%, third,
You're
35%, maybe more.
You're a little low, my friend. You're a
And
little
it depends
low.
on tax bracket, right?
It is, so the federal supplemental rate is 22%. Beyond that, you get into your state tax rate, which, Steve, you're in New York. What would the state tax rate be? Yeah,
Between state and city, it'd be a little bit over 10.
Okay.
Okay, and then you think
We're already 32.
Yeah, it is, and then it all depends on when it is paid out during somebody's during the year. If somebody would have maxed out on Social Security,
That's right.
or else
Or
you're
not.
thrown another 6.2. There are some states where there is no income tax. So in those states, somebody's going to get more money. It's an equity thing, is what it comes out to.
And
So-
Steve, as someone who's on the sorry, Gary, let me ask Steve real quick. As someone who's who's a corporate practitioner, I've been a fan of this term lately. Instead of just calling them corporates, and as someone who's a corporate practitioner of global mobility, do you see these taking other forms as well, or called other things, or packaged differently than just called a lump sum relocation program?
I see it packaged differently in that people will use what they're called managed lump sums. Well, they will tell an employee that you have X amount of dollars to use. Most of the time, it's net. It's a real issue when it's gross, and say, okay, so you've got $20,000 that you can use, or they say up to $20,000 that you can use, but it has to be managed through the mobility group, or managed through the vendors that we have contracts with, or something of that sort. So it's almost like an old cap, but they're calling it a lump sum. Now, some people will actually say, whatever you don't use, we will give you the cash for. I've seen situations where if you say you've got a $20,000 net managed, a lump sum, whatever you don't use, we will give it to you on a gross basis, though. So if you only use 10, instead of getting 10 net, you'll get 10 gross, but it's still more money in your pocket. So it's a matter of managing the amount of money that's actually given.
We've got some fantastic comments coming in already here, and I just want to go ahead and honor these right here because people are checking in left and right. This is, as I predicted, is a hot topic here. Literally, it's very sunny in Mississippi, as we all know from Jamie. Appreciate you, Jamie. Tim Quirk, Western. You like that literally? Dad jokes over here, Gary. You like that literally? A hot topic. Western New York in the house. Tim Quirk, Sylvia Ehrlich. Hi, Steve. Good to see you. Little New York love there. All right. Jamie shouting out Gary. Molly Feldman, hello from Jacksonville. Nicole Barilli. Hi, Ben and Gary.
Thanks, Nicole.
Yeah. Nicole.
Purposely excluding this part.
Well, Sylvia gave me the love, okay? Sylvia gave me the love there.
Nicole's never going to live this down. In fairness, Nicole is friends with us from Jeopardy. So once you go through the Jeopardy gauntlet, and Gary being a multiple time contestant on Jeopardy as he made it to the finals, I mean, we do have a bit of a relationship. One day you'll get there, Steve. It's just not today. Christy Saluka, Pittsburgh representing. Looking forward to the conversation. Casey, Gail, hi, Steve, Gary, and Ben. That's great. And let's make sure we always include Steve from here on out, everybody. I need this to go the full hour. Here, Sylvia Ehrlich, employees look to save their money and then end up with poor services because they don't know what they don't know.
Oh, that's great.
That's true, right?
You don't know. Put that on a bumper sticker, please.
We probably got 50 years of experience on this webcast right now. And then there's people that get $5,000 and think they're a relocation expert.
Yeah, I mean, or even give the $5,000 that think that you can do it.
but I mean, what an unfair position to put somebody in, an employee, to say, "Here's a bunch of money, figure it out, and I'll see you on Monday." I mean, is that even responsible?
Well, I'm going to tell you a story, and this happened years ago, and it was a former employer, and it was one of the first people we actually tried lump sums with. We gave somebody a lump sum, and it was a percentage of their base salary. And 23-year-old kid moving by himself. He gets his money. He calls me a week later and he says, "I'm in trouble. I have no money and I have to pay a security deposit." I said, "What'd you do with all the money?" He goes, "I went to Scores."
I'm not familiar with that establishment, Steve.
But you can figure out what the establishment is.
For later?
Yeah, you can figure out what the establishment is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was very honest with me.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I hope it was worth it, because I can't give you anything else.
You're homeless now. I hope it was worth it.
So the amazing thing, Steve, is that for me brings to mind one of the comments that I wanted to make, and that is an employee who runs out of funds at the worst possible time. Yeah. Meaning, insert Murphy's Law into this scenario, that in his case, he needed a down payment or a deposit for an apartment, and lo and behold, he doesn't have the money. So, you know, I think one of the things that we see often with lump sums, especially when they are not managed, Steve, to use your term, there are an unmanaged lump sum, is situations where the employee runs out of funds and ends up coming back asking for more money. And so what do you do then, right? What do you do then?
And you know, it's sorry to interrupt, then. It's about calculating the amount, and you know, they're depending on your organization, and when they do it within my company, and I'm not a big fan of it, but when they do it, they say, okay, what do you think that the lump sum should cover? And I'll tell them that I think I can project what I think that it would be based on what they want to offer the person's level, what we've done before, staying within fairness and staying within, you know, compliance within the policy of WPP itself. I said, but I'll also ask them, and I'll say, have you ever had a contractor come in and redo your kitchen? And most of the people will say yes. I said, and did it come in on budget? And everybody will say no. Right. I said, it's very simply the same thing. It's once you start taking out the walls, you have no idea what's behind there, and you can't, you know, budget properly unless you have every single one of the facts. And just trying to throw a number in front of somebody before, especially you have a mover go in and see exactly what's in somebody's house. You know, that's one of the biggest things. You know, you can't give somebody a proper budget.
Well, and even then, you know, it's common to have a variance of 10%. You know, so even when you have professionals going, and I think that's a wonderful point that you've both made. That even professionals have a hard time estimating how much this is going to cost. Yeah. Right. And so then you give it to some kid or even not a kid, so maybe even a savvy professional in other situations, but they have no idea. Right. And there's always things that can consistently get underestimated. You got a great comment here along those lines. Tim Quirk says, do CEOs ever get offered a lump sum, or is it just entry-level employees? I think this is one of the great myths of lump sums here. Anybody care to take a swing at this? Nobody wants.
Go ahead, Steve. Yeah, I'm holding back.
Okay. Quite honestly, there will be some people in the C-suite that will say, you know what, I would just like a lump sum portion of money. Can you do the BVO? Can you do the home sale? I mean, not the home sale, the transportation of goods, and then just give me X amount, you know, based on whatever the number is, and just let me do with it what I need. That way they take care of their own temporary housing, and they do their own flights and their own travel, whatever it is, they do it all on their own. So yes, you will get some sort of a lump sum, but I have never seen, either within my own organization or when I'm talking to my peers, anybody in a C-suite position actually just get a lump sum like an entry-level position. And for an entry-level position, Tim, you know, it's easy to do a lump sum, but it's the level below the C-suite, and once you get from, you know, management up to that director, you know, EVP kind of level, that's where it's very difficult to lump sum anybody, because you just don't know what it's going to cost. You don't, as I think Sil said, you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, we've also been seeing or hearing about, You know, I have a friend. He's an executive at a biopharma company. You know, he got a $50,000 lump sum to relocate from Boston to Chicago.
Did they specifically call it a lump sum, Ben?
You know, I didn't look at his offer letter, so I don't
kind of
know
where. If you don't know where I'm going, you know, the terminology there can vary greatly.
Let's talk about it.
I would simply add that in any situation where you have a C-suite individual receiving a lump sum, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but it's my understanding that Sarbanes-Oxley considerations have to be looked into. So any kind of compensation for an officer with a company, there are certain legalities that an organization is going to make sure that they're just compliant with before compensation is delivered. I'll put it that way. And so now to answer the question, in my experience, 17 years of doing this, I've never seen someone who is an officer with an organization simply receive, I'll just say, a check, and then, you know, whatever terminology you want to use into that. So in just the few that I did last year, in each instance, at a minimum, the employer paid to move their household goods. And you'll probably appreciate that, Ben, just that piece alone, the variables that can go into moving household goods, moving and storage.
So this guy gets 50 grand. He calls me up. He has no money left over by the time he calls me to talk about his move, because when he sold his house in Boston, his real estate commissions ate up all that, and the tax. Right. And so he calls me up and he's like talking U-Hauls, right? You know, and this guy's like a director at a pharmaceutical company who's being hired to launch products all over the world. Right. And he's making a nice salary, right? Probably has a 3 in the front of it. And he's talking about do-it-yourself moves. And so we patched something together for him. I mean, I tried to patch something together, but it's like, it just blows my mind. You know, but somebody says, "Hey, you want 50 grand?" Your answer is, "Yeah, I want 50 grand." So
I don't want 50 grand. No. Let me add one more thought if I can, because if I don't, it might escape me. But here recently, our CEO has been really trying to drive the point home that there's only one item in relocation that can still be considered non-taxable, and that is specifically a tax-protected home sale program. So in the example that you're giving me, Ben, where this individual received a check, a lump sum, call it whatever you will, for $50,000, the glaring error to me is that the company missed an opportunity to have at least that one piece of his program, the reimbursement of his home sale expenses, processed in a tax-protected way. And by missing that, how much money did they cost? Not necessarily themselves, but they cost this employee in the fact that he owed taxes on those money. Ben.
Well, let's give an idea of the numbers. I mean, I don't know if this is even possible, but what if we did a hypothetical, right? Let's say he had a $500,000 house. Let's say it was $500,000 house, you know, in Boston. How much money would a managed home sale process or program save him and the employer, in your estimation, Gary? You can just make a number up too. I'll go with it.
Well, I'm not going to make a number up, but on a $500,000 house,
I'll totally endorse.
So we're
it.
just.
I'm going to say between 35 and 40 grand.
I'm going to say you're probably not that far off. So $500,000 house.
And while Gary's doing the math, Nicole did want to correct her statement before, and said hi, Jamie, as well. So. Just want to amend that statement. Look, we got a ton of comments coming in. Love to hear other comments, other stories, we got some great stuff coming in here as well. Let's see here. Janet, it's great.
$14,000 to $15,000.
14 to 15 would have been the savings through a managed relocation. So and that by the way,
in just tax money.
Just tax money.
Just be very specific with you.
Right.
In just unnecessary taxes, or I'll say it this way, if they had done it via direct reimbursement, or the scenario for your friend, that's 15K in taxes that they would not have had to spend if they'd hired a relocation firm to administer a tax protected program. So there you go. There's my answer.
And the tax protected program would cost 35 to 40 grand.
Yep. And I, interestingly enough, all of a sudden now there's another 14, 15 grand for the household goods move to give him a proper move, right? With him and his wife and children. I think that's so important. Let's see. Katie Linehan says a lump sum when complemented with experienced guidance can be effective. Not grossing up is just a derogatory day net. A lot of folks don't understand the whole concept there. I think
she's right.
Thoughts on that?
She's right.
No, I mean she's right on that. And quite honestly, when you're doing a lump sum, a managed lump sum, you have experienced people behind you telling you the best way to spend your money. It can work. It definitely can work. It's making sure that people don't go out and spend it unnecessarily.
Right.
And it's not even that, it's submitted through reimbursements. You give somebody the check up front. You're just telling them the best way to spend the money. So if you have the experience behind it, that's something completely different than just giving somebody a check and saying, go at it.
So let's go back here. Let's go back because we wanted to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think we got ahead of ourselves because the bad and the ugly are so salacious here. So let's go back to the good here. Okay, let's start off with the good. Let's talk about the good. I think that was a great segue, Katie, into the good. So what are some of the good aspects of a lump sum program?
I guess I'll start by saying that a lump sum program is probably the easiest way for a corporation to budget and forecast what their expenses are going to be. And that's assuming that they don't go crazy with exceptions after the fact. So we're going to give you $5,000, $10,000 to cover your relocation. We know exactly what that is. There's no easier way than just that blanket statement to say this is what our spend is going to be for the next calendar year, right?
Steve, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it is so easy to manage as far as on the corporate side, and it's also, for the younger generation, as far as within my industry, marketing, communications, advertising, the younger generation that they are very, very mobile. They don't have a lot with them. It is just easier for them just to say, okay, yeah, I'll take the money because I can do everything on my own. And it's like, well, do you want? No, I'm just going to crash at my friend's house until I find some place to live, and they will do everything that they can not to spend any money. This little thing right here is their best friend. And they feel that they can do everything by it. And for some people, they can. There is no doubt about it. They can. Some of them are getting very good at it. A lot of people, a lot of the younger people that I move, the kids that are in their 20s, they're the ones that don't have a lot that go with them. They have very, very little furniture, if anything. It's basically suitcases, and that's it. That's all they're taking with them. So it's very easy to do things like that. And it works out well for the corporation. It works out well for them as well.
Okay, so that's the good, right? So the good is you know exactly how much it's going to cost. You can budget for that as a company. And the purchasing power is in the transferee's hands, and they can make their own decisions. All right, so let's talk about the bad, and we kind of got into this a little bit more, but let's talk about the bad. What's the bad aspects of lump sum?
Well, I mentioned it a moment ago, but certainly in a situation where the funds are not grossed up, that creates. Let's just say that right out of the gate, either the relocation company or the employer has to set proper expectations. And those proper expectations are your lump sum is $10,000, but that does not mean you have $10,000 to spend. It means Gary, you have $10,000. Yep.
And then the employee says, well, how much do I have?
Right. And so now we get into the exercise of math, right? And so do we actually want to get into their lives as to what their actual tax rate is?
And if you shortfall them by a penny,
by $10,
penny, if you tell them anything less than what they're getting by a penny, they want that because there's God help you. Well, you told me this is what it's going to happen.
God help you, right? Yeah, that's a very good point. And so I would have to say we probably would not want to get into exact amounts with an employee, other than explaining, as I did to you a minute ago, Ben, that they're going to owe federal taxes, state taxes, and FICA taxes. And when I did the math on Steve's numbers here a moment ago, just the federal supplemental and his New York State was 38. I'm sorry. Federal, state, and FICA was 38.2. Okay. And now consider, Ben, and this is important, that the gross up itself is taxable. The gross up itself is income to the employee.
You got to gross up the gross up.
So then it becomes a question of, do you gross up the gross up? And if you do, now what is 38 quickly becomes 45, 48. How far down that rabbit hole do you go?
Do you gross up the gross up's gross up?
And that's my point. How far do you chase that to the point where, is it to infinity and beyond, as Buzz Lightyear would say? And I think the answer is no. I'm not going to ask about your specific situation at WPP, Steve, but it's been my experience that some will, but that most would not do I'll use the term a true up, right? Where they actually will to infinity go out on what the math is, right?
Mm-hmm. And then, so we got a comment here actually about the bad as well. Here, Jason Exley says the bad is perceived equity among peers relocating, but many times couldn't be farther from the truth.
Perceived equity, meaning the company's being fair, the company's giving me the exact same thing that they're giving to someone else. And I think this came up in some of our emails as we were preparing for this. Steve, you said employees talk, right?
Of course they do. Even though they don't sit next to each other or see each other anymore, they still talk.
Yeah. So now we're in a situation where does someone possibly have, I don't know if I want to say hurt feelings, or just a sense of, feeling that I didn't get what someone else got. So, does the company value me as much as they do them?
Me not getting the same value as somebody else brings up the word that we in human resources do not like to even say, much less see. You always have to make sure that whatever anybody is getting, they're getting the same exact things. There is that equity portion of it. You have to be consistent with the way that you are doing this, just like you're consistent with your health benefits and your retirement benefits and everything else. Because if there are two people who are doing the same job who didn't get the same exact thing, unless they look exactly alike and talk alike and eat alike and are almost twins of each other, there's going to be an issue. It's just the way it is. It's going to be an issue.
Well, isn't this another myth though around it, that the same is fair and equitable, and when the same is actually not, because a one size fits all does not make sense for everybody? And you used health insurance, I think is a beautiful example of this, right? So with health insurance, it's we don't say to employees, you get $5,000 of benefits regardless of your family size. We say, here's how much it is for you. Here's how much it is for your spouse. Here's how much it is for your dependent and your dependent and your dependent. We don't say, hey, here at our company, we cover you, your spouse, and one dependent. And then, like a one size fits all approach is actually not equitable, because you're not taking care of the whole family, and in this case, the whole relocation. I mean, what do you think about that notion?
Steve?
I'm thinking. He asked, "What do I think about it?" So I'm thinking about it.
Gary, go ahead. No thought required from you, Gary. Go ahead.
Well, I think there's thought required for all of this, Ben.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Obviously,
I'll reiterate that I completely agree with everything that Steve is saying. That there has to be not just an appearance of something, but there has to be fairness within your employee base.
Which is why managed relocations that say we move everybody at this level gets these benefits. And it's not saying it gets these benefits up to $10,000. They say they get these benefits. And whether they have a big house or a little house or an apartment or a big family, or I mean, I think at some point the illusion of fairness is one of the reasons. Fairness and predictability are some of the driving forces behind this lump sum thing. And I think that this process is anything but fair and anything but predictable in practice. And I think that's one of the big disconnects we're having.
I think there's such a push towards a lump sum. I mean, it has been around since I've been in the industry. It has come and gone, but it has been around. There's been a much bigger push over the last 2 years since everything except qualified home sale program becomes taxable.
Thank you.
Companies are saying, you know what? Let's just give everybody X on a net basis. That way we know exactly what it's going to cost us. Why are we worried about reimbursing a transportation bill or an airline bill if it's not taxable anymore? I mean, if it's not taxable anymore, just give them the money. Let them do what they have to.
Right.
I think the change in the tax law, I'm not even going to say I know the change in the tax law is what prompted people to move towards this.
Right.
Because, yeah.
But we've been seeing a movement towards lump sum before 2017. I mean, lump sum has been a thing for a while. It just became a big thing a few years ago.
Yeah,
So,
but the trend towards it prior to it was a cost containment trend.
yes.
It was a cost containment trend.
So this brings me to another question and we kind of touched on it, but I want to unpack this a little bit more and get kind of a and kind of go back to you, Steve, and get kind of a corporate practitioner perspective on this. You know, when we look at other benefits within the suite of benefits that a company offers their employees, and we look at things like retirement benefits and health benefits and vacation time, you know, and all the other bennies that we advertise when we put a job posting together. Why do we look at relocation benefits differently? We don't say, you know, we have X amount to spend on medical. We have X amount. You know, I don't know why do we feel the need to contain the relocation benefit, but we don't do the same thing to the other benefits?
I have no idea. I really don't. I wish I could tell you. You know,
defend your constituency, Steve.
It's very difficult to, because I think the people who actually are the ones who control the money within the corporations don't understand, for the most part, exactly what it costs.
Yeah.
I think that you know, there was about 10 years ago, you know, I got the budget and people were like, can you tell me if this is correct? And one of my operating companies actually had something in there for like $100,000. I'm like, that's moving one person in the C-suite, and you know, you move a lot more than that a year, so that ain't going to work. You know, it's just they're just pulling numbers out of thin air to put in a kind of relocation budget, and then they've got to work towards it. One of the things I've seen over and over again is if you're moving January, February, or March, you're going to get a lot more than somebody moving in the end of the year. It's just the way it happens. Just the way it happens.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. But by doing something like a lump sum, they can say, okay, we expect to move 100 people. We're going to give each one of them $10,000. We know what our costs are.
Well, and I deal with I have medical clients, right? You know, and they're moving surgeons and things like this, right? And similar, you know, economic situations for these people, right? And they're getting like a $15,000 cap, right? And they come to me like, hey, these people keep going over their cap. They keep going over the cap. You know, what's wrong with you people? We need more bids on the moves. We need more this. We need more that. And I'm like, well, half of them went over their cap because they got marble topped everythings and they need to be created. And they have enormous homes and they have,
70-inch flat screen TVs.
How about 84-inch curved flat screen TVs?
Yeah, even better.
Okay.
Even better.
I want that right there.
I want that too. Yeah.
And then I say, but you know what? The other half of them are fresh out of their residency and they're spending $5,000. Yeah. And if you average it out, 15 might be the right number. So if you need, for budget purposes, to go back and tell your hiring managers how much this is going to cost, tell them 15 on average.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. But don't make that the problem. Don't make your budgeting issue the problem of your employees.
It shouldn't be. And you brought up marble, and one of the things that I've been telling the HR directors in this company and in all the other companies is that unless you actually get into somebody's house and know what they have, you have no idea what's going to cost. I said, you might move a marble freak. Somebody's got marble tables. Somebody's got a marble couch with just cushions on it. Everything is marble. I said, and you're looking at a move that's 60,000 pounds. I said, and everything's got to be created. I said, so you never know. I get a call from a mover, and he goes, he's heard me say this before. He goes, it's not marble. I said, what is it? He goes, this guy has got a half a dozen original medieval knights of the suits of armor from real knights from like the 1500s in England. What?
They're like museum pieces.
They're like museum pieces that all had to be crated. By like people from the museum had to do the crating for it as well.
How do you ensure that?
Like Sotheby's.
How do you assign a valuation to that?
And then the insurance on it itself. Yeah.
Right.
And then the insurance on it itself.
Yeah, because you're not getting $6 a pound for that stuff.
No. And I could tell you, quite honestly, I wouldn't have fit into one of them because I think the tallest one was only about 5'11".
Yeah, exactly. That's cute. Let's see here. We got some great comments coming in here. I love the stories because I think the stories I think is where this thing comes alive, right? Because people are asking us, well, how come? Well, let me tell you a story about a guy that had 5 nights. Let me tell you a story about a surgeon that had marble topped everythings, right? Let's see here. We got some great comments here. Christy Saluga. Personally, I think lump sums defeat the purpose of relocation benefits. Relocation benefits are meant to get the employee from A to B with the least amount of stress and in a timely fashion so that they can focus on their role and be as proficient as possible. A lump sum eases the financial burden, but often comes without guidance, and the employee then looks for the least expensive way to get from A to B so they can hold on to as much of the cash as possible.
She hit it on the head.
She totally did. Excellent point, Christy.
Oh, Christy hit it on the head.
You distilled the whole thing for us, Christy. I appreciate it. That's why you don't host this show. I got to stretch this thing out, Christy. Okay. No, Christy, you hit it right on the head. And I want to get to one of the points that Christy made and talk about this in the ugly portion, right? She says a lump sum eases the financial burden, but often comes without guidance. The employee then looks for the least expensive way to get from A to B so they can hold on to as much of the cash as possible. And this is when people start to do really ugly things with their lump sums, okay? So let's talk a little bit about we're all on different sides of this equation, right? Which is this. I love when we can kind of attack it from like a comprehensive way. What are some of the craziest things that you've seen or heard that people do or find them situations that they found themselves in because they got a lump sum and they were trying to hold on to the cash?
Oh, yeah, I'll go first. And it's story time again.
Yep. Yes.
I had this guy moving from New York to Detroit, and they gave him a lump sum, and he went out onto the internet and he found a mover. And 3 weeks later, they still haven't found the goods. I got a call from the Indiana State Police saying that they pulled over a truck for speeding and they had my name and phone number on a piece of paper in the cab. And do I know this person? And I said, yes. We're looking for that guy's goods. They're supposed to be in Chicago 2 weeks ago. I mean, in Detroit 2 weeks ago. He goes, oh, they're on their way to Chicago. What should we do? I said, can you just get the truck to the precinct? I will get somebody to come over there and take everything out of the truck and put it into a different one. And so we can get it to this. And the cops, they were state police in Indiana. They were actually very nice about the whole situation. But yeah, no, this truck was gone. And then we tried to call the number for the people in Astoria, and that number was gone. They were completely gone. Couldn't find him again. Yeah, couldn't find him again. So
that's what they do. They just vanish.
They completely vanished. Yeah, and if it wasn't for this guy speeding and the state police pulling this guy over, we would have never found those goods. They would have been, on eBay or at a flea market in Chicago.
Right.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Gary, have you heard stories like that or seen things like that happen?
Right. Well, the example he provides is a textbook rogue mover example. I think I'd add that your employee and you were very lucky because it's been my experience that in that situation, the police normally do not want to be involved. That the police will say, this is not a criminal matter, this is a civil matter. And therefore, they kind of really take a step back and advise the employee to retain counsel and to pursue the moving company through a civil lawsuit that the police have their hands tied, if you will.
Steve is so lucky that they were speeding because they would have shown up to destination. I do believe they were coming to deliver, but they would have shown up to destination and they would have required 3, 4, or 5 times as much money. And to Gary's point, the cops would have shown up then and say, well, what's the problem? You know, it does say on the bill of lading that they're going to charge based on actual weight. Yeah. You know, so pay the people their money and you could take it up with them in small claims court or whatever.
Yeah.
I love this comment here. Stephen John, friend of the show. A lump sum is like when you get your brother a gift card for their birthday. You care enough to get them something, but not enough to get them what they really need.
That reminds me of a story I wanted to share with you, Ben. Please. And it's a scenario. I think the two of you a moment ago were saying that people in HR perhaps are coming up with numbers or figures that they think might work, but they're not necessarily based in reality. So I'm in conversation with a company right now that's not one of our clients, but the reason why they reached out to me is because last year the company relocated a new director of HR and they provided that individual with a lump sum. And so when he went through the process himself, having received a lump sum, coming out of the other end, his comment back to his new company was, these funds were insufficient and there has to be a better way that we can do this. Long story short, my phone's ringing. Right. And next thing you know, now they want to have a conversation about, explain to us what it is, what it means, Gary, to have someone manage the relocation process. Going from the mindset they've always had, which is simply, we're going to write the employee check. Here's your lump sum. Get yourself from point A to point B. Right.
Love it. And we've got some fantastic comments. Let's go through these and I'd love to hear your reactions to these. Okay. So Sylvia Ehrlich once had an executive with an early lump sum. He thought it was a great deal. Turns out it didn't even cover his NYC discounted broker fee. Oh, goodness gracious.
Oh, God.
Yeah, well, what's real estate? What's real estate in New York? Think about real estate in New York, right?
Oh my gosh. Let's see. Let me flip the angle here. Let's do this. Maybe we do this and that way everybody can be seen. Jason Exley, back in the day when I was on the corp side, I used to build bottom up cost estimates for relocating new hires to, quote, keep them whole. And then I'd ask hiring managers that wanted to offer lump sums to be on the call with me to explain to the new hire how much they were going to need to fund their own relocation. Yeah. I think it's interesting because if the hiring manager was getting the phone call instead of the poor HR rep when it wasn't enough, it might be a different story, right? There's a disconnect there between the people that are offering the benefit and the people that have to deliver those benefits and explain those benefits.
Right.
Let's see here. Viva checking in from the Netherlands. Good to hear from you, Viva. Viva says, does lump sum work for international transferees for that young group?
Actually, we have a rotational program that we use this program for, and it works very, very well. Actually, we give them to help alleviate some of the costs moving around. We give them a housing allowance, but for the most part, all we do is we basically give them what is it, like $5,000 net, and say, be on your way. They live together. They crash on couches. They find furnished apartments wherever they go. I mean, finding a furnished apartment is actually very easy if you're not in the United States. So, no matter where they go in the world, it works out very, very well for them. Yeah. The issues that we do have, of course, because, of the way things work in the U.S. and especially in New York, where some of these kids will come into, is that it is so much more expensive to come into New York. So we do help them out a little bit, but for the most part, everybody is pretty happy with just, what I used to say, the buck in the truck, and we don't even give them the truck anymore.
Do you provide an air shipment as well, Steve? Like, say they want to have some personal items that are less than 500 pounds.
No, we don't even do that. And quite honestly, we used to, but air shipments started becoming so expensive that what they're doing is they say, we'll give you up to, I think, 4 bags per person.
And you read my mind.
Yeah,
read my mind. I was just about to say I've seen a trend towards we'll pay for the luggage.
You bring 4 more big bags on, it's going to cost me $300.
Yeah.
So instead of 3,500 with an air shipment. So that's what they're doing.
And you have the predictability as well, going back to predictability of that cost.
Yeah.
So Sylvia Ehrlich, she's been on fire in the comments. Sarbanes-Oxley. So if somebody were to, let's say, stroke a hiring bonus or a whatever we want to call it, what is that level where it becomes a SOX compliance issue? Do we know? I mean, does anybody know out there where there's?
I do not know.
Yeah,
I
wish I had that problem. I don't have that problem yet.
Yeah, right.
When I have it, I'm going to call you, Gary, and say, "Hey, remember 10 years ago we were talking? I hit that. I got the feds here. Good news, bad news. I got the feds here."
Right. Or Ben, hey, all those options that I received in my package that I just exercised? No.
Well, remember all those Berkshire Hathaway options I got on the show?
Right. I didn't get a coffee mug.
Something as far as Sarbanes-Oxley, how that would affect us, especially when you come to a home sale. Because if you're actually going to be loaning the equity of somebody's house to an executive so they can buy something else, that is against the SOX requirements.
Yeah.
I used to know a lot more about it. Unfortunately, that's one of those things that I've forgotten a lot about because we still move a lot of senior people, but they're mostly renters. And the people at home like to keep their homes.
I'll echo that you do not do an equity advance to an officer within a company if it turns out that they need funds to buy a property at destination. I think our advice has been, number one, being at arm's length from it, but that they go and obtain a bridge loan from a banking organization that they have a relationship with, and not expect the company to do anything in terms of an equity advance, right?
So it's when you're talking about Sarbanes-Oxley, you just don't loan money to a senior executive. Even if they come to you and if Sylvia comes to me and says, I've got this person that we're going to have to put out the security deposit for it, you got to look at what the person's level is and who's going to get the money back. Is the company going to get the money back because we're the one who's actually going to be funding the apartment, or is the employee the one who's actually going to have to get the money back and give it to us because they're funding the apartment? So that also could fall into the SOX non-compliant.
Sarbanes-Oxley. Yeah.
And what level is that? I mean, we talked about director before, but you mentioned officer. I don't always know that directors are officers. Is it officers of a company? Is it senior management?
I don't even think Sarbanes or Oxley know exactly what the level is. One of the things that I have been told through my legal counsel is if they're in the annual report, just consider that they're not going to be eligible for certain things.
Yeah. I would have to look it up. I'm not exactly sure, Ben, what the level is, but he's probably right.
That's a good rule.
Named in a 10K, for example, they probably are not eligible for any kind of or you'd have to make certain that you're compliant with Sarbanes-Oxley for any kind of compensation that they receive.
Great stuff. Greg Donovan says, I expect that HR Mobility's involvement with the employee is very similar when doing managed lump sum versus fully sponsored. Doesn't that defeat the purpose then?
Well, we're still involved, and we're involved just as much. I mean, what the purpose is trying to contain costs. I mean, and sometimes it does contain costs. If you say we're going to do X, Y, and Z for you up to $20,000, as opposed to just X, Y, and Z, you're still basically doing the same kind of counseling with them. It's just a matter of managing where that money can go. And there are some very difficult conversations you have to have sometimes, especially if a mover comes back and says it's going to cost $18,000 to move, and you only have 20,000. It's basically, okay, start the purge process.
Yeah.
Not in those
brings up a great point.
mind you, not in those terms, but still, you've got to talk to them about how to use your money outside of what you would do with a managed program. And you don't actually talk about the managed program. You just how's the best way to do what you need within the costs that are the budget that is given to you.
Sylvia says it's cheaper to do furniture rentals and air shipments. I mean, I would also say there's an environmental impact to the whole temporary furniture, temporary. I mean, we're junking so much stuff every time we move. We're throwing away sofas and IKEA, dressers. And I mean, I just as a younger person, and maybe this is my bleeding heart, but I'm like, there's so much stuff on the curb that's going to end up in a very bulky items in a landfill. And I just it kills me,
Just last week, in speaking with a transferee, I strongly suggested that she donate items. And being frank, she said, Gary, I'd never even considered that. I'd never even considered the idea of donating some of these things. And I said, you might even see a tax benefit if you go and donate some of these items to a charitable organization, right?
Sure. Georgia Angle, another bad is the risk that the employee will not thoroughly investigate and would end up using a non-reputable moving company. This is something for anybody out there that manages a lump sum program, or has friends who do, or whatever, have somebody in the situation where they call you, because this happens to all of us in this industry, right? Where they call you for a recommendation. Point them to the FMCSA, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration website, FMCSA. Just Google FMCSA Safer, SAFER, and then the name of the moving company that they're thinking about using. They will be able to find out if they're a carrier or where's my finger? If they're a carrier or a broker, okay. I need visuals, people. Okay, carrier.
Careful
broker.
with those fingers. Hit the right finger.
Broker.
Okay.
They'll know if they're a
licensed,
carrier,
unlicensed.
Well, they won't show unlicensed because they're not in the system if they're unlicensed.
All right.
Right? But if they don't appear there, then they're unlicensed. If they appear there, most of them will appear there, but they'll appear as a broker. And it's important to know that if they're a broker, they should not be moving your household goods unless they are an RMC who carries brokerage authority and vets the movers that they use. Okay. So if they are a broker, that is an enormous red flag, and you should stop and you should go do something else. Okay. You can also see how many trucks they operate. You can see their safety score. Okay, how many times have they been in an accident? How many times have they been towed? How many fatalities have they been involved in over the last 24 months? So all of this is easy, and it's all a Google search away, but it's FMCSA Safer, SAFER. And it's just key. So I just highly recommend.
Great advice.
Thank you very much, Gary. That's my only contribution today.
No, that's fantastic.
Sylvia says it's cyclical. See, this is what I love, people with longitudinal experience. Sylvia says it's cyclical. Lump sums were tried in the 70s, then again in the 90s, and now again.
And here we are again.
Each time it's been a disaster. So lump sums are like fashion, right? They come around every 20 years. And each time it's been a disaster. Now, Sylvia, what you're saying gives me great hope, because that means we're almost out of this terrible period right now.
Let's hope so.
Like bell bottoms, they just keep coming back.
Right now, I'm trying to remember when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expires.
2024, I want to say it sunsets, I believe. And then there might be money.
I'll echo Stephen's comment earlier, and Ben, you said weren't lump sums on the rise? Yes, lump sums were on the rise in 2016, 2017, but the Tax Cuts and Job Act was gasoline on the fire. It was that situation where someone in HR could say, oh, this is all taxable now? Why do I need, and I think about this from 10 years ago, I heard this all the time, why do I need a lump sum plus household goods? That's a program I knew from back in the day. When suddenly now household goods is taxable. So keep it simple. I'm just going to put it all into a lump, and here's your lump. And gasoline on a fire. Here we are today with more and more lump sums, which is more employees saying, "Oh, if I don't spend it, I get to keep it." Or even they have that perception, Ben. I don't spend it, I get to keep it. I'm going to the internet. Let me go to the internet and find a moving company, right?
Yep.
And next thing you know, they're on CBS.
Yes, the internet never lies.
No.
Right.
No. Google is the sage truth teller of our generation, right?
Internet, it's got to be true if you saw it on the internet.
Well, and Stephen Johns, I love it. Friends don't let friends do lump sum programs. Stephen,
you need laughing out loud.
You need a line of T-shirts that we can wear at ERC. You should be giving out T-shirts. Hilarious stuff from Stephen. But you're right. I mean, I think that, and this is where I'm going to take ownership of this problem. As the and everybody, if you're watching this right now, hit that like button, hit that thumbs up, or the applause there in the comments. Let everybody know we're watching. We got about 44 people on LinkedIn, another half dozen on Facebook right now. So a lot of people tuning in for this. But I think as a millennial, as an older millennial, right? I do think, I think we operate with the expectation that the internet is the best resource for information, that it aggregates all the information in one place, that people can comment and thumbs up and thumbs down it and star rate it, and then it can somehow vet it through the crowd, right? And it makes a perfect or as perfect of a product as you can possibly have as a marketplace. The problem becomes that good movers have been around for longer than the internet. So good movers have bad ratings on the internet. And the reason is because moving, shit happens, okay, when you move, all right? And all the times that it's happened, you get a 1-star review, okay? And there was probably about 5 to 10 years in the early days of the internet when nobody even cared about online reviews. Like, oh, that's a fad. We're not going to manage that. We don't care. We know we're good. We do business with WPP. Nobody's going to ever disparage me in this business, right? And so then all these bad reviews, started to build up, right? And then they set up like, oh gosh, we got to do something about this. Meanwhile, they're sitting at a 3.2 rating on Yelp or whatever, and they can't dig themselves out of this hole. Meanwhile, Joe Schmo moving down the street buys a Penske truck, right, and says, hey, I'm going to give a go at this moving thing.
And has his 5 buddies give him 5-star reviews.
That's right. And now they got 5-star reviews, and they are insurmountable juggernauts of the internet at this point, okay? And then June comes along and they break something and they're like, crap, we got a 1-star. We're down to a 4.5. We're never going to come back from a 4.5. Forget Joe Schmo moving. We're Joe Blow moving today. We're going to paint the Penske truck orange and let's give it a go, right? Hey, and 5 more buddies give me 5 stars and we're back in business, baby. And this is the way that the internet moving companies operate.
And they say it's local and long distance, and local is, of course, for them between Brooklyn and Queens, and long distance is actually going into Jersey.
Yeah, going to the Poconos, and you're like, wow, But yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? So and then I don't even know how people begin to find a reputable international mover, using a lump sum. To Viva's point earlier. Let's go ahead and look at some more of these comments. We got some fantastic comments. I love when people get after it in the comments here. John Marsh, in your experience, how many corporations understand the issue of lost productivity when administering a lump sum policy? They measure everything else. Okay,
a couple of things. First, John, I haven't played golf since October, so I have no idea what my handicap is at this point in time. But thanks for asking. I think one of the issues about putting the lump sum program into effect is that as the HR people services changes and there are new people coming in, you get people who don't understand the mobility industry itself. And then they look and they talk to other people and they go online and they say, what's new, what's best. And of course they talk to some of the consultants that their company already has. And they're like, well, managed lump sums are the way of the future. So they're just going with whatever anybody is telling them. They have no idea what it's like to do anything else. So they can't manage what it's like outside provided the lump sum because they've never worked in anything other than the lump sum program. People who actually understand it and have done it and have seen how a manage move program works towards a lump sum, they're the ones who can actually say, this ain't working. I've got an employee who's spending, 4 hours a day trying to manage his own move at this point in time, and he's fighting with his movers. What can you do to help me? So
Yeah.
I think some of it has to do with the people who are actually working with us in the mobility arena, because they just don't understand.
And they don't understand, and they might not understand until the nightmare happens.
Yeah.
It's learning through the school of hard knocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I want to ask you about. I want to take that one step further here. Does the company have a responsibility, ethically, legally, to protect employees from these types of situations? Is there a duty of care responsibility for domestic relocations?
I was waiting for you to mention duty of care.
Duty of don't care.
That's a tough one. That's actually probably one of the best questions I've heard in a long time.
When we talk about duty of care, we talk about going to China. We talk about going to some far-flung place that we're all kind of a little like, hey, I don't know what I'm going to do over there. Somebody protect me. But we don't talk about it when it says, hey, all right, you're going to Denver. Here's a U-Haul, and don't mind those Rocky Mountains over there. I'm sure the transmission's great.
And I think the duty of care comes down to if you have a policy, and what does your policy say, and how and how consistent are you in actually administering the policy?
Administering that policy, yeah.
And that is the duty of care itself.
Has anybody driven a U-Haul, 26-foot U-Haul truck with a sedan hitched to the back up and down the mountains of West Virginia or the mountains of Colorado or California, with questionable preventative maintenance on that rental vehicle that you got at a gas station? I mean, this is what we're talking about. This is real stuff here. I mean, Steve, you got a lot of people in the city, right? A lot of these people don't even own a car, okay?
Yeah,
and then they're going to go rent a 26-foot U-Haul, right? Expect to know
drive that truck down the interstate.
Know how low the bridges are, right? I mean, so many myriad issues. People, I want you to, if you're watching this right now and you're bored looking at us, I want you to Google trailer sway. I want you to Google the concept of trailer sway. Trailer sway U-Haul, okay? This is what happens when you hitch a trailer or a car to the back of a truck and it starts to move on you. And when it starts to move, the rest of the thing starts to move, okay?
Comes the snake.
Yeah, this is wave physics here, right? And you're literally, your entire truck can flip over because the thing you're towing in the back starts swaying. And this is, I mean, is this alarmist? Maybe. Are people's lives important? Definitely. I mean, I don't know what to say. People need to know about this stuff. This is real stuff, I
think, Ben, the only answer I can provide to you on that is about a year ago, it really dawned on me that perhaps my company was in a position where we could help in this space. And to explain what I mean by that, HomeServices Relocation, we're a small part of a much larger group called HomeServices of America. HomeServices of America is the largest real estate company in the U.S. now, Steve. We have, at last count, just over 52,000 real estate agents nationwide. So just a month ago, because it took a while to put it all together, I rolled out an education program so that our agents would at least be aware of this problem. So for me, it just started with the idea of, hey, real estate agents, do you even know that this is happening? And for the most part, the answer that came back was, no, Gary, we did not. So this is kind of like turning the Titanic. Nothing happens very quickly. But I'm trying to impress upon them that when they are meeting with someone who wants to buy a home or sell a home, start with the premise of, do you know what a rogue mover is? Just ask that question, right? Just start with, are you familiar with the term or aware of the term rogue mover? Do you know what's happening in the moving industry? And, if the answer comes back, yes, I am aware, great. If it's no, I'm not aware, we've created a website called true-mover.com where any of our agents can go to just get educated, to just receive information on what are the red flags for a rogue mover, and then what are the things that we should look at to make sure that we have a reputable moving company. So I want to thank you for the reference to FMCSA, because I actually have not visited that site. And when we finish up here, I'm going to go and do some research on that, because we might link that from the site that we've put together for all of our agents to use.
Yeah, I think that'd be brilliant, Gary, and I think you'll find it extremely eye-opening. You can Google the largest van lines, see how many trucks they're operating, see how many fatalities have occurred in the last 24 months, down to, you know, anybody that owns a truck, whether it's moving or freight of any type. Sylvia weighs in here and says lump sum negates duty of care. I find this interesting, Sylvia, and I love you. But I don't know that I agree, because I believe, and I'm probably the least qualified person to say this, but it's my show, damn it. So here I go. I believe that the company has a responsibility to protect employees from foreseeable danger.
Well, I mean, you would think so. Okay. And it depends on the company. And once again, I think goes back to the policy, and Sylvia makes something up. There were other people who were talking about falling off a truck, throwing out your back when you're loading your stuff into your own U-Haul. You know, does that now become an issue for the company? And quite honestly, years ago, we had a very similar issue in that somebody was driving a U-Haul up and got in an accident and ended up in the hospital. And it's like, well, what do we do? Well, guess what? It was considered, I think what it did is it at that point in time fell into the BCA policy, because we considered it being business travel, because she was moving herself. But you know, does duty of care stop if you just give somebody a check?
Yeah, but here's the thing: they're performing relocation, which is company business, right? They're moving for the company at the direction of the company. And so isn't that pay? I mean, let me ask it another way. Steve.
Yeah,
another way. Are they on the clock at that moment? If I'm moving on a Tuesday, I'm relocating. Is that a work day? Do I have to take PTO?
Are you a new hire or an existing employee? And when
I'm an existing employee. I'm an existing employee, and damn it, I'm special. Do I have to take PTO or not?
No, you are a salaried employee. I know. I mean, and quite honestly,
exempt employee. I'm in my tank top. I'm loading my U-Haul, right? I'm getting after it with my short shorts, okay? And then oh gosh, I pull my back. An amplifier falls off the top tier, cracks me in the skull. I stumble off the 4-foot truck. I land on the concrete. I'm bleeding out. Nobody finds me for 30 minutes. I have limited cognitive ability at this point. I mean, yes. Yes. I mean, we're laughing, right? I mean, God bless me. I hope
you've got a good point. You have a good point, but you know, it's not something that, I mean, this is both bad and ugly of lump sums. What you are describing is bad and ugly.
Yeah.
It really is. And that's why, I mean, if we're doing a lump sum, that's why I would like to use something that as a manage, so I can, if not manage it myself, at least give them the people who can do it properly.
Yes, I agree. And I think that's the very least we can do, right? Is vet the providers and say, hey, I know I don't care about you. Here's $5,000, but here's a list of people that I've heard do a nice job.
At a minimum.
At a very minimum.
That. Yeah.
You know,
Ben, every day in the business world, the three of us, everybody who works for a business, we make risk assessments. We make judgments based upon the risk reward. So a managed lump sum, and I love that term, versus an unmanaged lump sum, is HR really making a risk assessment, or are they throwing caution to the wind and hoping that the worst case scenario doesn't happen? You know, I don't really have a good answer to that.
It would be interesting to hear what the chief risk officer would say if all of a sudden that advertising executive had loading trucks in their job description. Would they quantify the risk differently? And would they say, you know, gosh, I don't know that they should be loading trucks. I don't know that they're properly trained to do that. I don't know that we carry the proper insurance for that type of activity.
I don't have a good answer for you.
And yet we're asking people to do this on the clock. And I'm not trying to make anybody feel uncomfortable. Well, maybe
No,
I
not
am.
at all.
There's no answer for it. There really
There's
is
no good answer, right?
There
But these
isn't.
are the stories I think we have to have, because we gloss over these situations. And this is the plausible deniability of this circumstance is what allows good people to kind of make bad choices. And I think this is the onus that we have as an industry, right? Because I mean, let's be honest, we are in the managed relocation business, and we're doing it because it is a service that has value, not just for our own economic gain. Elena Anderson DeLay says lump sum programs are beloved by organizations, financial managers, and accountants who like standardized, predictable costs. The motivation is not from a lack of care for the employee, but a cost containment mandate from the CFO. HR and Go Mobility professionals are often stuck in the middle. And I agree with you, Elena, 100%. And I appreciate the comments so much. I think that this is letting people off a touch easy. The motivation is not from a lack of care for the employee, but I don't think that you can ignore the connection and that there is a trade-off, and at least factor that into the equation. The fact that there's a trade-off. Thoughts?
I completely agree with her. Completely agree.
Completely agree. No, I mean, and that's something that Gary and I were saying a little bit earlier, as far as it's so much easier to be able to, from the corporate side, especially the corporate financial side, to be able to say we've got to do a lump sum, because then we know what our costs are going to be, and that's it.
And the perception of it being a cost containment initiative as well.
Yes.
Sylvia responds back, if it's a lump sum, they've lost control. How's that duty of care? And I would say they haven't lost control. I'd say the company has absolved themselves of control and responsibility. And I think there's a difference there. They haven't lost it. Like the employee didn't steal that $5,000. Okay. The employee didn't embezzle those funds and get a U-Haul. The employee was given those funds, and it was called a benefit of the company, and they were doing it on company time. Again, so we could debate this all day long, and I think it's fuzzy and it's gray, and I would love to see a legal precedence on this. I would love to see somebody weigh in with an opinion on this, because I think that is the gap that we have in the industry right now. Is we feel there's a duty of care, but nobody has come out right and said, to my knowledge, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if there's case law or any kind of precedence around this, but I think that might be the missing link to convincing companies that we should be doing this. Benjamin John, I'm getting on my soapbox, guys. I apologize. I should probably be doing a better job of facilitating. Benjamin Johnson says, I love to save a buck when I was younger, but as I become more experienced, I realize I'm paying for expertise. Yeah, I have painter stories, I have landscaper stories, I have roofer stories about this. Employees new to the work world need someone to guide them on those facts, especially if they haven't been exposed to company-led relocation by their parents or peers. Yeah.
Stephen, let me ask you a question. Have you had any experience with lump sums being administered by way of a bank card?
Like, here's a debit card.
Yeah, I know. God, I am trying to remember how many years ago that actually first came into existence, and the absolute atrocities that happened with it, simply because it was so easy to be able to steal the money off or steal the identity of the person from that card. And it came and went, as fast as Menudo. I was just trying to think of something trendy.
I agree, and I remember seeing it years ago, but I can't remember. I couldn't remember why that had
it was just
fallen
so
out
easy.
of favor, so to speak, right?
Excuse me. It was so easy to just basically pre-value the card. It's when prepaid credit cards came about, prepaid debit cards, whatever you want to call it. And then you just give somebody a card with X amount of dollars on it, and then they could use it until it's gone. But somebody loses it, and then what do you do? It gets stolen. What do you do? Somebody steals the number off the card and takes all the money off of it. What do you do? There were just too many issues with it. So at one point in time, it was tried in one of my previous employers, and it did not work well.
Very interesting. From the experience of, I had 2 credit cards cloned last year.
Yeah.
Me personally.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sylvia goes on to say, looks like
Debit cards, mid-80s.
mid-80s.
Come on, you've got to age me, Sylvia.
Well, you did reference Menudo, which is about the same time period.
Yeah.
I feel like I got the Menudo. Cute for here.
That was a rather esoteric reference, Steve. Menudo.
The first thing that came to mind at my age, you pull things out that don't make sense anymore.
It was pretty quick, Steve. It was pretty quick. Sylvia Ehrlich said the lump sum isn't designated specifically for moving, and I grant you that. You're right.
Yeah.
So they say here's the money and spend it however you want. So
exactly.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sylvia. Great point. Hey, you know what? This has been fantastic. 35 people still tuned in, even though we're 15 minutes over time. I've been grossly negligent with your time. I have no duty of care for your calendar. I apologize profusely. I want to leave the last word though with my wonderful guests. Steve, would you like to give us a final thought?
Yeah, I don't see that in the financial difficulties that a lot of corporations are in at this point in time, that the lump sum program is actually going to go away anytime soon. I think it's a good way for a lot of companies to say it's the best way to manage relocations going forward for a short period of time. I think that eventually it will get back to a managed move, but unfortunately, I think you're going to see more and more lump sums in the near future.
Wonderful, Steve. Gary?
I concur. And I'll add that the sunset of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act can't get here fast enough. And unfortunately, only through the school of hard knocks or, learning through this is what we shouldn't have done, am I seeing corporations realize that they need to go to a managed lump sum, at a minimum, a managed lump sum. And I had that call again this week where a company called me and said, we've only been doing lump sums. Something went wrong. Now we're open to exploring the idea of something else. Right?
Fantastic.
Sad.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is sad that these things happen, but I mean, it's great to hear that people are changing their minds and that they can evolve on this. Elena's asking for a part 2. Elena, I thought you said I need some allyship around my lump sum hatred. So I'm working through my own personal journey with this. I want to thank you so much. I think through conversations like this and where we involve our community like we've done, and we kind of crowdsource the information and the stories around this and the best approaches, I think we're starting to affect change. We may not feel it yet, but by creating content like this that people can use as reference pieces for our corporations that are looking for thought leadership around here, maybe around this topic, maybe there's someone new in a role, maybe relocation is handled, as just one of many hats that a comp ben person or a talent person or a total rewards person has to do. And so they've leaned on lump sums in the past because they're so easy and predictable. Hopefully now they can at least understand the nuances and the layered issues that go along with these policies, and hopefully turn to an expert in there for some guidance. Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you so much, Gary. Thank you so much to all of our viewers out there that have participated and let your voices be heard. I really appreciate you so much.
My pleasure, Ben. Nice to meet you, Steve. Thank you, guys.
Gary, it was a pleasure meeting you. Ben, I told you I was really looking forward to the party, and it really was a party. Thanks.
Well, it was great because you guys were on it, and our great guests, wonderful commentary. Everybody, tune in tomorrow to Love and Relo on Friday. Worldwide ERC YP40 turns 10, and we have our second round of conversations with the YP40 committee, as well as a special surprise video tribute as well. You will not want to miss. I would tease that. See, I'm getting better at this whole broadcasting. I'm teasing things. Anyway, take care, everybody. Assume positive intent. Love one another. Be good out.